Hello, executive function coaches. My name is Ann Dolan, and today we're going to talk about strategies for your EF coaching sessions. All right, so today parents call our office looking for help for their kids, and they'll often have a long list of things that they think their child can improve upon. So we'll take all these notes during the intake and we'll send them to you so that you know what's going on with the child. But here's the thing. You may find that the parent wants things like they want their child to be able to keep track of all their assignments, reduce procrastination, make up overdue work. But what the child is willing to do might be a little bit different. That's because the student may be at a different stage in this thing called the stages of change. Let me explain. Just last week, I had a call from a mom, a ninth grade son, 15 years old, ADHD, and he needed an executive function coach. He was behind in his schoolwork because he was out of school for about a week because of COVID. And when he came back, he had all this overdue work. Now, kids, they would get going and complete the work and turn it in, but not David. He went into avoidance mode, and he didn't know what to do. He kind of froze, and so he didn't do much of anything. In addition to that, mom said he also needs help keeping a way of keeping track of his assignments. She wanted him to be more organized. So she had a bunch of other things. So what I recommended is that when the coach first met with David, that they do something called a student self-assessment, which I'll show you in just a second. And that allows us to understand, all right, with all these things that mom wants, what is David willing to do? Because sometimes what the parent wants and what the student is willing to do might just be a little bit different. So it turned out that David was at the preparation stage for completing his assignments, but pre-contemplation for keeping a record of what he had due. Let me explain the stages. And anytime anybody wants to change a behavior, they go through different stages, whether it's, eating better food, working out, reading more books, or changing a study habit. Pre-contemplation is when they actually don't even think they have a problem. And that was the case with David with writing down his assignments. Sometimes they're at contemplation, meaning they kind of see they have a problem, but they're not quite ready for change. Preparation means they're ready to make a change. They want to start really soon. Action means that they're actually trying this new skill. And maintenance is when they've created a habit. So what we found with David was he was at pre-contemplation for recording his assignments, but he was at preparation for getting that overdue work done. That was his pain point. So that's where we started with David. Doesn't mean eventually the coach won't go back and work on ways to record his assignments. But at first, we want to be good listeners, we want to build trust, and we want to develop a rapport with students. So how do you figure out where the student is? You have this tool called the student self-assessment. So I would recommend that you do this with the student in the first, maybe second session. And on it are the main executive function skills and how the student rates himself within each skill. For example, the first one is recording assignments. Does the student see there's no problem or a serious problem and they're willing to start right away, or somewhere in between? So again, if they don't see a problem, I wouldn't start with that skill. Find something where that they see the obstacle, because that's really where you want to start. The student's going to give more buy-in. Why is this all important? Because a lot of the kids we serve have ADHD, or maybe they don't have that diagnosis, but they struggle with executive functions, organizing, planning, focusing, execution, turning the work in. And when that happens and they get lots of negative feedback, they get into this thing called the doom loop. It's kind of like the cycle of negativity. Here's what happens. They get a bad grade or they don't turn in an assignment. Criticism from others, criticism from their parents, their teacher. What happens when that occurs? Lowered confidence. And when you have lowered confidence, you put in less effort. We all know what happens when you put in less effort. You get another bad grade or you don't turn an assignment in, and the cycle starts all over again. So as coaches, we want to help our kids break free of the doom loop. And that's where you come in. That's your job, to help kids see the positive side of things and get out of that cycle. So the first step is to determine where the child is willing to accept help. Understand their starting point, because that's how you earn trust. And when you have trust, kids are willing to jump through hoops for you. But sometimes with our kids, it takes time. Don't expect to go in there and it's going to be a miraculous change. Many of our kids have these ingrained bad habits over many years. So it takes time to work through them. So find their starting point, earn trust, use positive and encouraging language. I once read a study that 80% of feedback kids with ADHD get in school is negative. We want to change that narrative so that when we're working with them, we're their cheerleader. We want most of our conversations to be really positive. And we also want to be a good listener. Instead of just barking orders or telling kids what to do, instead, you're going to ask questions like, oh, tell me about that. What happened there? Interesting. Even say things like, I can see why you're frustrated. I get it. This is hard. So we want to make sure all of our coaches are generally following a 4-step structure when they meet with students. So here are the 4 steps. Step 1 is called the check-in. This is when we're just saying, hey, something, how is your week? Tell me about it. For you, what was a little bit challenging? Step 2, you're going to make plan. And this is kind of like the meat and potatoes of the session. This is when you're going to say, okay, great. Let's see what you have going on this week. You want your student to pull up their learning management system, which is a fancy term for their Google Classroom, their Schoology, their Canvas, whatever their district uses. And you want them to click on their classes. So, okay, let's take a look at English. What do you have going on in English? And when they open it, you want to be able to see what they have coming up, maybe what's due the next day and what's due later on. You want to go to the next class. Okay, let's take a look at Spanish. Let's take a look at math. And from there, you want to be able to take those things that are coming due and put them on the student's calendar. Although you could also make a list with kids, it's been my experience that actually this concept called calendaring is more successful, because then kids know, okay, I'm going to do this on Wednesday at 8:00, or I'm going to do this on Tuesday at 5:00 for a half hour. Now they know when they're going to do it and about how much time they should plan for it. So that's step 2, to figure out what they have due. Step 3, put it on their calendar. And then step 3 is also really important for kids, because kids don't want this extra thing to do. They don't want to feel like my mom made me do this and there is no payoff for me. So this is when you're going to say, all right, so out of all these assignments, it's heavy on your shoulders. What is good, like kind of keeping you up at night? What's the assignment you don't like the most? And let's start there. Let me help you with that. Let's get the hard, heavy lifting out of the way. Let's get as much done, or maybe all of it, so that you can do the easier things on your own. And then what I would recommend is at the end, and this is my favorite part, step 4, reflecting on the session. So what went well for you? Oh, we talked about this strategy. Is that something you might be able to use? But I also really, really like helping kids anticipate obstacles. And this is when you might say, so you have that science test coming up on Thursday. What could get in your way of getting the studying done? And kids say all different things like, I'm binge watching this new series on Netflix. I don't know. I'm like on YouTube, right? Way too much. Oh my gosh, my friend group is blowing up. It's all over text. And so kids can tell you what their obstacles might be. I had that lacrosse banquet on Wednesday night, and your job is to help them anticipate the obstacle. Okay, let's say you really want to watch YouTube videos. What are you going to do when, you're kind of balancing YouTube videos or getting that history assignment done? How can you trick your brain into starting something that you might not want to do? That's when techniques like timers come in. I'm a huge fan of timers. I love teaching kids to either use a physical timer. That's ideal. They can also use the one on their phone. It can be kind of distracting, but that's okay. The idea is just to use something. So teach them, set it for a short period of time. I call this the tolerable 10. Set it for 10 minutes. Anybody can tolerate anything for 10 minutes. And you say to yourself, I'm going to work as hard as I can, best I can, as much as I can, just for 10 minutes. And then I'm going to take a 1-minute break. That kind of gets kids over the hump of getting started. Another one is, this is the Pomodoro technique, based on research from an Italian in the 80s who looked at what is the sweet spot when you're working alone to get your work done. How much time is that? Can you only focus for 10 minutes, a half hour, an hour, 90 minutes? What is it? Turns out it's 25 minutes. So you might teach kids that have more work to do, set it just for 25 minutes. And then say the same mantra to yourself, work as hard as I can, then take a 5-minute break, set the timer again if you're able. Sometimes kids with ADHD can only do 1 Pomodoro or maybe 2. But his research found that for normally functioning people, your brain can sustain 4 Pomodoros. Here's what it looks like. Pomodoro, break, Pomodoro, break, Pomodoro, break, Pomodoro. Might not be for all your kids, again, might be too long, but that's the concept behind Pomodoro and anticipating obstacles. Now, let's go back to that part when I said you want to help kids plan out what they have, and you want to take their big assignments and break them down into smaller chunks. You might call it chunking. You can also do something fun with kids if they have difficulty estimating time. And you can associate food with time. And you can say to them, oh, let's look at this assignment that you have coming up. Do you think this assignment is a bite, a muncher, or a gobbler? And a bite is something really little, like I just have to submit those questions to Google Classroom. Or, oh, let me email my biology teacher about staying for extra help. That's something you can do quickly. That could go on your calendar list, or they could probably do it right then and there. A muncher is something that might take longer, like over an hour. I've got to do the Cornell notes on that history chapter. And then a gobbler is something that actually takes multiple days. Oh, I've got that English essay and I need to do research for it. That digital arts project is due. And so if a kid says this is a gobbler, you really want to make sure that they can break that down and put it on their calendar. Now, for kids that have weak estimation skills, you could even do a map. And a map is when you say, okay, tell me, let's go through your tasks, let's record them here. And then for each one, about how long do you think it's going to take? Reading log, you think it's going to take about 30 minutes? Great. Let's look at your calendar. When after school can you do this? Let's find that slot and put it on the calendar. Monday, 7:50 to 8:20, awesome. And that's how you plan it out. So along the way, what you will find in working with kids, especially kids that are kind of at the lower end of the stages of change, it's negative feelings about school because it's been hard for them for a lot of years. And if you see that, you don't want to put them on the defensive by asking lots of did you questions. Did you turn in your assignment? Did you go after school for your teacher? Did you do those test corrections? Did you follow up with your Spanish class about this? All these did yous tend to, put kids like their back is against the wall. If you're always asking them if they've done things, it may not go well. However, if you can just observe what you've seen and say something like, I've noticed it's hard to stay on top of your math work, that's really all you have to do. It's not accusatory, it's collaborative. And all you're saying is that you've observed a behavior. I've noticed it's hard to stay on your top of your math work is better than, oh my gosh, you already have 5 missing assignments in math and it's only January. That might not go too well. Or if it's something specific, you could say, I've noticed equations are really hard for you. And the reason you want to say I've noticed is to pause and let the student respond. Yeah, you're right. These equations are so difficult. I feel like I'm never going to understand them. I get it. You know what? You're right. This is tough stuff. I can tell you're frustrated. That's okay. It might be hard now, but you're going to get it in the future. Let's start out with this one. So you've kind of allowed the student to see that you're on the same team. So that's the power of I've noticed. All right. So I hope that this is helpful in all of your sessions and that as you go along, that you're feeling more comfortable and you're seeing your student improving. It is not about perfection. It's really about seeing progress. And you can take kids that are really reluctant on those stages of change. And even if you move them up just one step or two steps, that is progress. And if we can help support you in any way during the journey, please reach out. Thank you so much for watching.